we've got a few things to cover, and
Not enough time.
no, I'm sure we'll have enough time, but if we could do that. So I'm going to ask Mr. Jones to start us off.
So thank you, Mayor, members of council. As we discussed back in January, when the council approved the calendar for the budget, that we would have three workshops, budget workshops, the first Wednesday of February, March, and April. And we've covered a number of topics, from the enterprise funds to general funds to public safety. And today, for the workshop, we're going to have a discussion about pay practices, retirement comparison, healthcare, and then our all-time favorite, financial partners. What I will say, much like the public safety discussion that occurred last time, a lot of information you have today will be based on other surveys of other cities and how we compare with those other cities. So a lot of times we talk about salaries, but as Sheila has said in the past, it's the full compensation that goes into how we attract and retain talent. So with that said, Mayor, I believe I'm supposed to turn this over to the chair of the Budget and Effectiveness Committee.
Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager. The only thing I have to say is this is our third and final workshop of the year, and I think we have two more additional meetings that we'll have a chance to vet some things and get some things going. But I did want to report that Mr. Councilmember Eggleston had said he was going to be a little bit late, that he'll be arriving sometime early during this meeting. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that he will be joining us for this workshop. And with that said, we can get going because we got a lot to cover.
All right, I think that means he's tossing it back to you, Mr.
So
Jones.
I'll turn it over to Sabrina.
Okay, so first, we're just going to get right into the agenda. First, we have Sheila Simpson. She's going to start talking about our general employee pay practices. Last time, if you recall, we talked about public safety, fire and police employees. This is the second version of it. Some of the data is fresh off what we just got, so they were still crunching numbers late into last week. And then we'll move into retirement and healthcare as well. Again, there's been a team that's been working on this and surveying cities throughout the country with our comparisons. It's a different set of peer cities, so we did get some different results for public safety, as you saw last time. I think you'll be pleased with the general employee pay practices that we have. So at this point, Sheila, you want to take it over?
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of City Council. I am pleased and honored to serve as your Human Resources Director and honored to serve the City of Charlotte employees. As Ms. Joy Hall just said, I am here to review the compensation information that we received over the past year. You may recall that last year, one of the action items that we had as an organization was to go out and do a comprehensive review of compensation practices and benefit practices across our peer cities. And so today we will share this presentation, and I will start with compensation. The City of Charlotte is an employer of choice, is seeking to become an employer of choice, and basically that means where people choose where they would like to be and spend their careers. That is our goal and that is our quest. In the HR world, that means we look at the recruitment functions, compensation benefits, professional development, employee engagement, and ownership of performance. It is a cycle, and all of that together will help us become an employer of choice. Today, I'm here to talk about the compensation elements. So the purpose today is to review, as I just said, the practices when we compared ourselves to our peer cities, and we are going to specifically talk about employee retention data, salary increase compensation comparisons over the last 3 fiscal years, and to present to you a 2020 projection of salary increases. In addition to that, a comparison of our pay systems. Retention data. This slide indicates to you how employees retire. In the general population, this excludes public safety. Annually, you can see that our retirement rate is, on average, 91 employees a year. So in 2014, there were 52 employees. In 2019, fiscal year 2019, we have 81 employees, and that is not including public safety. In terms of retirement projections, for those who are newly eligible to become retirees, when we started the years, we look at those who could have retired at any point in time they became eligible before 2020. So that means we have 294 employees in the general population who still work with us, however, are fully able to retire. In 2020, that number becomes 90 employees who will become eligible. And in 2030, you will see that number goes to 183 people who become eligible. In terms of our employee retention, and Charlotte, we benchmark against our 20 peer cities. You will see that our retention rate without retirement, so we excluded the retirement out of this population, is 5.2%, and when compared to our benchmark organization, the median is slightly over 5.6%, and so we are, if you want to say, more favorable than our peers in retaining our employees. Now moving into the compensation areas of general employee pay increases. For the hourly workforce, the City of Charlotte exceeds our peer city benchmarks. On the right, you will see that over the past, in FY19, our annual increase in the hourly pay plan was 3.5%. We are there with 3 other peer cities. 6 cities were at 3%, 4 cities were at 2.5%, and you can see where we compare ourselves as we rate for our hourly workforce. So we lead the pack. This slide, I really like. It is a comparison in a visual way to indicate our hourly employees in terms of the 3-year average. You may recall that 3 years ago we transitioned our hourly employees into a traditional pay range. In that year, those employees received an average increase of 7%. The year after that, the increase was an average of 3%, and last year the average was 3.5%. So the 3-year average is 4.5%. When compared to our peer cities, we exceed them, and our peer cities are at 2.3% for the hourly workforce. This data is regarding our salaried workforce. Again, the same peer cities we compared ourselves against. Last year, City Council approved for a 3% merit budget, and Charlotte was among 6 other municipalities to reward something in the same area of 3%. There are 2 cities that exceeded the 3%. Both of those are in the west coast of the nation. Three-year average for salaried employees compared to our benchmarks. Charlotte's 3-year average is 3%. The median of that same database is 2.3%. This slide is the slide you normally see at this time of year that we present, and that is a comparison of what we project. Our compensation team is headed by Delane Honeycutt, and her team surveys folks every year, and then we also get information locally from municipalities. We also get information from the Employers Association, who provides human resources services for small employers in the Charlotte community. So as you can see, of all of those indexes, 3% is more of the norm, and the Employers Association is predicting a 3.2%, and again, they serve smaller organizations. In terms of pay structure comparison, we wanted to benchmark the methodology that people use to create a pay system. And when we compared ourselves against our benchmark cities, the result is that of the 16 respondents to that question, 14 of them use the same methodology that we use. And the methodology is that we compare our middle to their middle. The City of Charlotte has 3 pay plans. We have an hourly pay plan, we have a salary pay plan, we have a public safety pay plan. 38% of our workforce is in the hourly pay plan. That pay plan currently has a pay range system that was implemented 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Salary employees are what are in a broadbandy pay plan, which is what we call broadbandy. 26% of our workforce are salary, and 36% of our workforce is in the public safety pay plan. That is police and fire. They are on a step plan system. So the City of Charlotte has 3 systems currently.
Mayor?
What-
Just a quick question about the last slide. A couple of years ago, we had a separate band for people making less than $15 an hour. Are they all now captured in the hourly pay plan?
Yes, they are.
So we've completed the process of bringing everybody up to that minimum.
Yes, we did.
Okay, thank you.
Now, in the question set that we sent out, we wanted to know what type of system is more popular for our benchmark cities. And the answer came back, traditional range systems are more popular. You can see that there are a few systems that use a hybrid system, and we use a broadbanding system, but I'll go further into why we recommend making a change to that system. Here. Now, in the broadbanding system versus a traditional range system, the way I like to describe it in simple words is that a broadband is wide and deep. So when you have various job classifications, they all fall within a really wide and deep band. When you put in a traditional range system, the band becomes more narrow and is long. However, one of the things it extremely does for an organization, and more importantly for the employees, is employees can see their career paths better inside of a traditional range system. This slide is an indication of how we pay within the band. So currently, the City of Charlotte, to be competitive, we decided, over time we got here, but over time we are now paying people 90% of the middle, if I can say that. So generally when we hire, we try to hire at 90% of the middle for someone who's coming into a job, may not have as much experience. If you're very experienced in that same job, we may hire you closer to the middle of that band. On the top end is 115%. So that means if someone is in a job and they may have been here longer or their performance is truly exceeding, they may be compensated around the 115% mark of that same band. You can see on this slide how we compare to our benchmark cities. There is an outlier here, that is City F. The reason why that area is an outlier is because they use a hybrid system. Again, I just described it on the other slide, but this is a different look of the same information. The City of Charlotte's minimum band hiring rate guideline is at 90%, and this slide shows you where other cities are, and you can see that predominantly most organizations that we benchmark against use the 75% lower end of the middle, and we're using 90. The other organization with us is a local organization, I'll probably say that, near us. Our top end is currently at 115% for our hourly employees. So today, one of the things we discussed at the Budget Committee when we presented was considerations for how we might want to restructure the pay structure moving forward. As I said,
Sheila, before
Yes,
we
ma'am.
go that far to what you want to change, let's go back and see what the questions are about the material that you've already presented. Are there questions about the I'm going to start with Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Simpson, going back to the slide, Charlotte's FY 2019 increase for salaried employees is competitive with peer city benchmarks. On mine, it says 12, but I think it was a different number. I think it showed like 19. So, okay, keep going back. Yeah, it was before that.
The slide? What was the title of the slide? I'm sorry.
Charlotte's FY 2019 increase for salaried employees.
Increase.
Yeah.
Salary
That one.
employees. Yes, ma'am.
Right, on that one. The question that I have is when we're looking at this increase, how does this compare against Charlotte's current market?
So every year, we actually, it compares well, short answer, very well. We benchmark, and there's a slide, I think, coming up. We benchmark with other organizations, but we also get local information. And we get information from private sector employers. We cannot actually share their names, but we actually benchmark with private sector organizations that compete for the same workforce that we have working for us. So we compare very well.
And the other question I have, we did pass as a council under previous leadership, the pay equity. How does that compare since, yesterday, Women's Equality Equity Pay Day? How are we looking regarding those numbers as far as benchmarking? Because it doesn't break out in here where we are pay equity wise as far as our female versus male
Okay.
employees. So
Yes.
is that in here somewhere?
That is not in this information. The answer is, when we did that, it was a gender equity study analysis, and you're correct, it is done by job classification. And again, we came in extremely well there. I hate to, from my recollection, we were around 2% that may have had a pay differential between genders. And that is extremely good, because we're on a merit system. So we're not on a system to pay people the same, okay? We are on a system to pay people for merit. So when we did the equity study based on gender, the information indicates that we are equitable based on gender.
Thank you. Yes. Right, I remember it in the report, but as we're having this conversation, I just wanted to revisit it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Driggs. Excuse me.
Yeah, I'm just trying to interpret this data in terms of not just what the increases have been, but what on an apples-with-apples basis our levels of compensation are relative to other cities. Do we have any way of actually taking similar jobs or people in similar circumstances and looking at what they make in other cities and here, maybe adjusted for local cost of living, that kind of thing?
Yes, sir. So the answer to that is our general employees, their median income is $56,335, okay? Compared to our benchmarks, that does not include public safety. Okay? Public safety is around 62.5. Public safety only is $68,476. When we compare that geo-adjusted to the cities that we benchmark, they are at $66,600 roughly. So we are within range there, yes. Now, our cities, again, are national, and one of the things that we look at when we look at the data is we look at regional data and national data. So our median salary being $56,000.
The other thing I look at is retention and recruitment. How do you measure our success in recruiting people? I know, for example, the police department has had a hard time, but among the general employees, do you have a metric like how long a position remains open before we're able to get somebody to come, or because, aside from comparisons with other cities, there's a basic supply and demand thing here, and if we are able to recruit and retain the talent we want, then that would indicate to me we're doing pretty well, and conversely. So is our recruitment strong?
Yes. So I don't have the metrics to share with you today. However, I will tell you that the city of Charlotte is a highly sought-after employer. Generally, we receive between 80,000 and 90,000 applications a year for positions, and most often we are hiring, because people are coming and going, our average hiring rate is around 500 to 540 a year. So highly competitive in the retention area. Inside of that, we obviously do have some challenging areas, and police is certainly one. Public safety is one. Over years, we've had some challenges in our utilities technicians areas. So we put in concerted efforts to do something differently there, not only on the recruitment side, but it's also retention side. So you're right. So we continue to look at that, and we can probably provide data to help answer your question more fully after today, if you like.
Anecdotally, CATS has had problems filling certain positions. Okay, I'm
think we
interested
need-
to
I
see
think
where
we
you're
need some
headed with this,
data.
but I'm trying to find a
Yes.
context to interpret this
Well, I
information.
agree. I think that we need to, that was one of my questions as well, in terms of what categories are falling outside of the averages.
Right.
What we need to know both where, in terms of recruiting and retaining, how difficult, where are there jobs that are difficult to retain, and are there jobs difficult for recruitment? And by category, I think
Yes.
is what I think we'd like to see that.
Okay.
Mr. Phipps?
Yeah, speaking of retention and recruitment, can you make any inferences to the fact that you mentioned earlier that we have so many, a couple of hundred employees that are eligible to retire but have not? What can we infer as to the reason for that?
We're a great place to be. We're a great place to be. No, and I'm being serious when I say that. So when we talk with our employees, one of the things our long-term employees have is they really love what they do for this community. And when you can see the value of your work in the lives of the people that matter, they continue to do it. They love what they do. They love what they do.
Okay. I would like to follow up on that and actually have the data. In terms of those folks eligible, in terms of people that are retired, I would like to know how many of them come back to work.
Okay?
And what that means for them in terms of, how they are able to maintain, or what their salaries are. I think this, 50% or something, an amount.
The retirement rules in terms of what their earnings can be? Okay.
Okay,
So,
and that
yes,
as
you want,
well.
so for clarity, Mayor Lyles, are you asking to get data about employees who have retired that we rehire?
Rehired, not outside hires, but
Yes.
rehiring, because you said it's a great place to be. So do they retire and continue to work, or do they come back as rehires and continue to work? That's really the question, I think, getting at Mr. Phipps' question. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask a couple of other things. On slide 12, Charlotte's 2019 increase for salaried employees is competitive. We measured twice in the two cities range. Are those the same cities that we see? Are there consistencies in the comparisons?
Yes.
Okay, is that basically the city and the county in Mecklenburg?
Which data point? The 3%?
On the 3%, right. So that's just those two cities. I'm trying to figure out, are those regional, local, or national cities?
Oh, I'm sorry. The 2% that's at 3.5%, ma'am?
Yes,
Those cities are out west.
okay. One of the other questions that I had, you said in the hybrid model and on slide 20, that city that was market rate that was really up to over 130 was a hybrid system. What does hybrid mean compared to where we have three different plans? What is a
Yes.
hybrid system versus having three different plans?
They're deploying a step plan and a traditional range plan within one system.
So how is that different from the three systems that we have?
We deploy three different systems to different populations of groups. They're deploying two systems within the same population of group.
Okay.
So they're using a hybrid system.
Okay, that's very helpful. And going back to Mr. Drake's question, I really would like to see by hourly salaried, as well as police, those places that you have difficulty retaining and doing it by pay plan would be very helpful. The areas, the three types of employees plans that we have. I wondered, is there a time on slide 19 that, you talked about broadband and traditional. Is there a shift that's according to kind of like the economy, your recruitment opportunities, or are these kind of just, this is the way it is, very clean? Or do you see organizations moving back and forth?
No, what the trend is easily a traditional range system. The city of Charlotte deployed a broadbanding system. However, when we deployed it, we maintained the market rate structure within it. So my words would be, we deployed it, but we didn't deploy it fully. The traditional range system is much easier to communicate to employees. The traditional range system, as the data indicates as well, is a structure that's most commonly used in the market, not just Charlotte, but then within the market, and many of our peer cities use it.
So I have one last one. I understand what you're saying about stability and predictability versus performance management, which I understand that. But one of the things that I wonder about, are there categories within our pay plan? I know that police and firefighters are governmental employees generally, but is it more of a practice to compare those places where we are competing with our local markets? Are there places in our organization that we really are getting out of the 90,000 people that apply? Are there categories that are applying and competing within our market, which I'm going to assume is our region? Like, do people live in Gastonia, South Carolina,
Correct. Yes,
Lincolnton?
yes. We have that data.
Okay, if you can give us that data on where people are coming. And one of the other things, this is just for information, in this workforce development area, we use the automated application system. And what people are the findings around those automated application systems is that they have an inherent bias in them, in the languaging and the wording. And often that bias is around soft skills. So I don't know where that fits or how that fits in the way that we do things. We talked about the gender equity. I wonder about the racial equity
Correct.
and how we bring people on at the same job and,
Right.
What race or ethnicity they're in. And I wonder if that's something that you could provide to us, a comparison of where we are, basically at entry level and who gets at the top pay. Okay.
We
Is that
can conduct
possible?
that. That is, and our system, you're right, it is electronic. However, our system does not do automatic screenings. So those systems that you might be comparing us against use keyword screening, and they actually scan your resume looking for similar skills and keywords. They sort off of keywords. Our system is screened by an individual. So people actually reading.
You read 90,000 applications?
Not I, not me.
No, I mean, no, your team reads 90,000
So,
applications?
the organization, we have 11 HR managers in city departments, and we have other HR managers. And so we have a system that does sort your qualifications by how you keyed in information. So it is how the applicant keyed in the information. And then they will sort the applications by high, medium, low in terms of what they're looking for. And yes, they will read the applications.
But
We
they
have
are
people reading
sorted by,
applications.
in some ways, by an algorithm. Culling it, is that what the word is for taking some of them out if they don't?
I didn't hear the question,
Yeah.
I'm probably.
Taking, after the computer comes in, some applications fall out. Yes. Because of the way that you assess, that's what I heard, I think I heard you say, that you might get the high, medium, and low, but some are called out. I didn't understand then, if I didn't understand that, so.
The algorithm
was looking for keywords, and then you looked at those that have the keywords?
Is the
We,
computer,
our algorithm does not use keywords.
I know, but
is the computer eliminating some applications before they get to somebody's desk?
No.
but you said it does the qualifications.
Okay, so,
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
understand. I really, well, you can tell us later. Just send us an idea of an answer. I may not be able to understand
Okay,
it.
so I'll try it one more time, if I may. We accept all applications.
Yes.
Then the computer takes that information and identifies, based on the content of that information, if the applicant meets job qualifications. So it will put a word next to it, meets, does not meet. I apologize. So all the applications are still in the database. Then individuals will go in and go through those applications. So the computer is only sorting to define criteria that meets job requirements and criteria that does not meet. We do not have a system that takes any applicant out.
Okay. I would still say that what we learned from Fuller's presentation is that a lot of the qualifications require a 4-year degree that would be suitable for a 2-year associate degree job. So again, we've got, I think, something that I'm just trying to bring to our attention.
To diversity, equity, and inclusion? Yes.
Yes,
And one of the changes that we implemented 3 years ago was that to not only look at your education, but your experience. So you may have someone who has 20 years of experience, and before, we would sort that out if they didn't have a degree. Now, they're not automatically, when I say sort out, the computer would have said not meet. Today, we're saying that if an applicant has 20 years of work experience that relates to that job, consider that applicant as qualified, because we were trying to address diversity, equity, and inclusion. And yes, we can do more in that vein. I 100% agree with you. Yes.
Sheila, I think what the mayor's asking is, if we have a requirement for a 4-year degree, and that 4-year degree maybe is not necessary for the job, somebody may not have applied in the first place. So if we can start thinking about what are the real skills that a person needs to do the job, we can start thinking about even the front end.
Yes, sir.
That's really where I was trying to go. And then, before we go, I had Ms. Mayfield and Mr. Driggs. And Mr., oh, I'm sorry, Larkin has not spoken yet, so Mr. Eggleston?
3 quick things. One, if this was covered verbally, I don't see it in the slides in front of me, but if it was covered verbally in the 5 to 10 minutes that I missed, I can get it offline. But how were the peer cities determined?
The peer cities, I may have to have Phil help me with this one. The peer cities were determined by Dr. Tazar, and there was an algorithm used to compare like organizations that were like us in many ways, including geographic indicators that were statistically valid compared to the city of Charlotte. And I can have Ryan give you more specifics about how that was done,
Okay.
if needed.
Mr. Driggs started to touch on this a little bit, but just so, I do think it'd be helpful to break out some of the data on bottom of pay range, top of pay range by department, because obviously we're not going to be the same across all our departments, but am I reading the data correctly on like our slides of 20, 21, 22 to understand that we are in a really, I know ours aren't numbered the same, but yes, starting there and then the next two, that we've put ourselves in a really good position to recruit, but not a great position to retain. That's kind of my takeaway from those 3 slides. Would you say that's fair?
May I ask what slide you're
The
referring
ones
to?
that you are now on the 3rd of the 3 that I'm referring to.
Okay, so,
Yes. And then the one
so
prior
it does mean that if I'll go to this slide,
Right.
it means that in general, our workforce, when you look at the median of any job, pick a job, the median of that job, the salaries of our workforce falls within 90% to 115% of that job value. So when you compare that bar up, you can see that most employers we are in line with. We would like to expand that to widen that to about 125%. But
Because if I'm an employee, potential employee, and I look at that chart, then City F and Charlotte look the most appealing to me as someone starting. But if I'm been
Indy,
in the job 20 years and am the best at what I do, suddenly Charlotte and City A look like the last places that I would want to be.
Yeah,
That's how I read it as a potential employee.
right.
And I guess in the places where we talk about, my final question is, it looks like we are more than competitive in terms of our increases that we've been giving, at least of late. Are our employees, do we believe that our employees are aware that we are more than competitive when it comes to salary increases? Is there any way that we're messaging that, or that we're making that known to our employees that, 3% might not seem like a lot? It actually puts us on the front edge of our competitive set. And if not, do we think there'd be value in terms of employee morale in messaging that better?
I personally believe there's a great deal of value to always help educate all of us around our total compensation. So this is the dollars that you get compensated, and then next you're going to hear about other benefits that are forms of compensation. So I strongly agree that it is very difficult to articulate the total compensation that you receive when you work for any organization. We do have data that we share with our employees that our financial compensation from the salary side and our increases are equitable when compared to our competitors. Now, whether or not a person on an individual basis believes that to be real for him or her, that is a very difficult question.
Okay, Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Simpson, thank you for presenting this information to us, but I have a couple of specific questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So what we know and what we have seen in a snapshot of the last 3 years, that we have lost a number of higher level staff from the city to the county, to Market, and even recently to the airport, still under the city, different department. So when we have this conversation about our comparison, and I've had a couple of different conversations with current staff and former staff regarding, do you utilize the employee survey that was created? Because hopefully that's given us and/or utilize the exit interview program. Have we truly captured some of that information? Because this is great to look at it and say, well, we're an employer of choice, but we know that we also have some very clear concerns that are happening in multiple departments that are outside of retirement and usual attrition. So are we putting any energy, or have you had the opportunity, since you're still creating under this process under your leadership, to really look at what is that disconnect? Because we have lost some really good, we've lost some great knowledge and experience, and that competitor is a couple of floors down versus across the line.
Councilmember Mayfield, I'd like to take the first shot at that, and Sheila, if I misstep, you let me know. So yes, we have taken the employee survey data and began talking with not just the leadership team, but the Queens team, and those are individuals, about 80 individuals from the different departments that are nominated by their peers. We've also, we call it the 150, we've talked to the team about the survey and some of the issues with retention, some of the issues with supervisors, and how supervisors treat employees, some of the things that would allow employees to feel valued, some of the issues about upward mobility within the organization. Sarah Hazel has really worked hard with the team to pull together information from those work groups, which will be reflected as we move forward. So it's the first step, but we started, I believe, maybe in January, trying to have more outreach in conversations with employees. And even this month, we're going to call them wrap sessions
Wrap
with
sessions.
the manager so that we can get unfiltered information back up.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Driggs?
So I had a very similar question as to whether we were evaluating the survey results and seeing whether the employee's perception lines up with the data. I do think it's worth emphasizing that 294 employees that are still here, the 5.2% resignation rate, those are positive, very positive metrics in terms of just the observed actual departures and behaviors, so that's a plus. I assume you're going to talk about this 90 to 115% range because I do think, particularly looking at it in a more entrepreneurial way, having greater scope for income advancement based on performance and time and service and so on. We see this also in the public safety area, right, where
Yes.
people bang up against the limit and then they go for years. So I think we probably need to do some tweaking, and I hope without any large overall budget impact. It feels like that we are paying enough, but that maybe we could structure it in such a way as to provide better incentives and particularly to reward top performers.
Absolutely. I think that's where Sheila's going to go, race to the end, because that's one of the recommendations.
I think
Right.
we're ready to talk about what revisions you're making as recommendations, Ms. Simpson.
Mr. Driggs, you made my recommendation.
Let's do it. I'm for it. Motion to approve.
So the recommendation is to take our current system in the salary plan and make it similar to that in the hourly plan, and then take both of those and start to have a system where the entry level would start around 80% of that mid-range, and the top end would go to 125% of that mid-range. So that is one of our recommendations. And then the second bullet to the bottom is another concept that also in terms of how do you reward the compensation? How do you do that? So in some discussions, one of the things that we have come to realize, especially when you have a 3% budget, our employees are saying that, bread and, milk goes up. And so they're asking for a way to be compensated for increases that just happen in life. So one of the things that we are proposing to consider is when we receive a merit budget or a compensation budget, I would probably call it a compensation budget, might we consider splitting that to have a general wage increase to cover those costs of things that generally go up, and then set aside another portion of that for the merit. So that is something under consideration as well that we will bring forth to you.
Would anybody see a decrease in their income? Or is this something that you can implement in such a way that it just unfolds in the future and benefits the people that are intended to benefit?
Correct.
And last comment, private sector comparisons. I think we know the narrative about how disparities in incomes have widened and incomes at the lower level have not progressed. So we want to be sure that we're accountable to a lot of people who pay taxes and in our environment where they don't see 3% increases and have the same kind of job security that they do in the city.
I was looking at it not just as a whole component, but really where are we having where are we having problems recruiting, and what
Yeah.
does that act as? So,
Right.
okay.
Yes.
Mr. Phipps, and I also just got a text from Ms. Ajmira who said that she'd not be able to attend the meeting this afternoon. So I just I told her I'd let everybody know.
Okay. So,
Okay, Mr. Phipps?
so in view of more information that I guess the committee would want to receive, are we saying then that these recommendations, this recommendation, are we going to, what's the process? Are we going to be acting on this? This is what you want to do. So are we saying we have to wait until we get this information back to synthesize it and make a decision? Or are we ready to say, we want you to consider these things and move forward with them?
So, Councilmember Phipps, we would see this as being a part of the 2020 budget. And so we're bringing this to council now because it's such a change in what we've done.
Okay.
But it seems to be consistent with what we've been hearing over the last couple of years. Is, many times when we say 90% of the median and 90% of 50 and all that stuff just confuses people. Okay? So now we're starting to say we want a band that we can still recruit people but also retain them.
Okay.
And it's more consistent with what we're seeing across the country.
Okay. So have we always had a broadband system, not a traditional range system?
Now, we used to have a step system. I remember when we went to broadband, I was working here, so that's been a long time ago.
So we've never had the traditional range system?
No.
Yes.
Prior to 1994, there was a step system in place.
Okay. Okay, but we decided to move away from that due to the broadband system?
Yes, we moved to
Now
a
we wanna move
broadband
back.
system.
I think that's one of the questions. What are the consequences of each move? I think that's just weighing what's beneficiary, what's a benefit and what's not. Are there winners or losers? And I think Ms. Simpson said there are no losers in the conversion. I think that all of that has to be considered by the management team.
Okay.
But I'm sure the employees will let us know if, I'm sure they'll let us know if,
Great.
have the sense of that. Okay, any other questions?
Mayor, can I add one thing that Ms. Simpson didn't cover, but I think it's important? So we talk a lot about apprenticeships, and we talk a lot about some of those positions that maybe they're hard to find, the particular employees. And so I just want to just let everybody know that I'm so proud of what's happening between Sheila, Brent Cagle, Victoria Johnson, as well as Angela Lee. We're looking at all of our employees, and not just airport or water, but are there some systems that are going on, apprenticeship systems, that really work and they should be applied across the entire spectrum? So it's once again trying to be as one team, and Brent Cagle's doing a great job of coordinating this, and we would believe that we could show you some of the fruits of that labor in this upcoming budget also.
One thing I would like to say is I know that we strive to make city government an employer of choice, but I think, in our actions over the last several years and months, that we've been pretty robust in trying to attract new companies here, so they do have a choice. Opportunities do come up that people want to do other things. So I don't know, and listening to some of my colleagues, that I'm as concerned about, attrition and people moving as some of my colleagues have expressed today in this meeting. I think that people want to take advantage of opportunities, and they do. And we got other companies coming in that some, opportunities are there. So, just these numbers are very good. So I don't know why we're trying to say that, hey.
Well, I think the question was, are there areas that we see this happening? Not overall, generally, I think Ms. Simpson's accurate. People are working, but we were asking specifically, like, if it takes us 5 years to get a planning director, then maybe there's some things that we need to do differently. And I say that with kind of like that backlens, but there might be areas where we're not getting the people that we want to develop in certain infrastructure areas, and it may not always be a salaried person. I just want to know, where is it going? Where are there deviations from the norm that we should be aware and make sure that we're prepared to deal with? Because that 110% is not a good thing if you have to look really hard to fill a position.
To go over that. Yes, ma'am.
Or, if you can't get people that would say, well, once they come, they're at the top and they're never going to get a raise, that's not going to be a very good employee benefit as well. So just some things to think about. But I think we're looking for specific classifications. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to say this. I think that the budget is the manager's recommended budget, and to make sure that we know, I think he's trying to give us some guidelines of where he's going, but at the end of the day, it's our vote at the end that makes that final decision. So thank you for helping us understand where you're leaning, but you guys know that we'll come back and talk about a lot of this again. All right, Mr. Jones, who's next?
Update on the retirement plan
Oh,
comparison.
I don't want to hear this one.
It's not, maybe not as bad as you
Maybe
think.
it's not as bad as we think.
I think I got one. This is yours.
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit about retirement and the comparison we did to peer cities. It's part of the same study that you've seen for public safety compensation and the pay practices that Ms. Simpson just went over. So it starts through the same fashion, looking at the pathway to employer of choice. This particular presentation is going to be around benefits, specifically retirement. So the purpose of what we want to provide to you is a little bit better understanding of the current plans available to Charlotte employees, including what type of plans they are. You may hear the term defined benefit, defined contribution. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. And then we're going to get into an analysis of our plans compared to these peer cities. And we did use an actuary for that data.
Were they UNC Charlotte graduate actuary?
No, we actually used Kavanaugh McDonald, which is the managing actuary for our local firefighters retirement system and the state retirement system, so they had a very good understanding of our systems.
It wasn't a serious question.
Okay, so onto our types of systems. All of our employees that are full-time are under a true pension system. There are two true types of pension systems. There's one that replaces Social Security, and there's one that doesn't impact Social Security. So on the screen, you'll see kind of an example of each. Our firefighters are in the top system, and in the bottom system are the rest of our employees. And so just to make this very clear, while the top system has a higher annual benefit, they're then not going to get any income from Social Security from their time with the city. So it's kind of designed to offset. Beyond defined benefits, there are three main other types of retirement systems that are out there. You have a cash balance retirement system. So a few cities have shifted to this. So basically what this means is all of the risk goes on to the employee until they retire. So the city contributes money each year. However the investments go, they'll have a cash balance at the end, and then that is converted to an annual payment at retirement. The second type is a 401k style in which the employee takes on all of the risk. And then the third type is a hybrid system, which will give a lower guaranteed benefit from a pension on top of a contribution to a 401k. So looking at it this way, these are the five types of retirement plans. The top ones are more risky to the city. The bottom ones are less risky to a city. The words are chosen. I don't want to say that one is better because it really depends on investment performance. Certainly an employee is going to probably be better off in the pension systems, but when the employee is taking on all the risk from investment, there is some upside to that as well. And you'll see here all of our employees are in the top two tiers of plans. So we have two systems. Our general employees and our police officers are in ELGERS. Police officers are in LEO, which is a component of ELGERS, but that is all state controlled. We have no We have no say in that other than through the Algiers board. And then our firefighters are in a local retirement system, the Charlotte Firefighters Retirement System, and we do have a local board with representatives from both firefighter members and the city. There's a lot of data on this slide comparing general employees, fire, police, and the systems they're in. I did highlight a few key distinctions. The first one is that in fire, they are able to retire at 25 years of service and age 50, so that is a little bit unique. The other plans would be either age 55 or age 60 with 25 years, but more common, 30 at any age. The second unique thing is also fire, which is they're able to only use their top 2 highest years of income, whereas the state systems use 4. And then, as I mentioned before, the fire system does not receive Social Security, so they don't pay into it during employment. They also don't receive a benefit on it once they retire. For law enforcement, there is a little bit of a unique thing that North Carolina does with a separation allowance that only police get, and I will explain that in a little bit more detail when we get into the comparisons. And then finally, the 401k contribution. So this is separate from the plans, from the pension plans. This is in addition. The city does 3% for general employees and fire. That is a city decision. And for law enforcement officers, it's 5%. That is a state mandate.
Okay, I wondered, you want to go slide by slide right
just
now?
want a
Go ahead.
clarification,
Yeah.
the slide, if that's
Yes, please.
all right. So if somebody retires at age 50 after 25 years, they start drawing the retirement benefit immediately, right? Not at a later date, like for the federal government?
Correct. So that's a big advantage of the plan without Social Security, is that you don't have to wait until you're 62 to get the additional. So yes, they will get their full benefit at this retirement age.
And there's been a lot of discussion about the 25 versus 30-year case. Is there an incentive in terms of the comparative advantage of you doing one versus the other built into the terms?
As far as
A motivation for people to retire after 25?
as far as liability, it's more advantageous for the city if they stay beyond 25 years.
Right. And for the employee?
It's better for the employee to be able to have the option of retiring at 25 because they are able to continue working till 30 if they would like to.
Right, okay.
So the 25 is certainly more favorable to the employee.
Okay, Dr. Harlow?
Is there any, for general employees, is there any plan that, where the general employees don't receive Social Security as part of the pension plan, or is that just?
There are, and I actually have that in a slide coming up. There's a couple of them.
So I wanted to ask, the average of 2 consecutive years for a fire, was there a rationale for that or a reason behind that decision?
This has been part of the plan through state code for quite a while. I don't think that they're discussing this. Fire's board is discussing a number of changes, some considerations. I'm not aware if this is one of them.
And when it comes to the police, the impact of having the separation allowance, where does that kind of the question, is that I'm assuming that's better for the employee at the age of 55 or 30 years to an incentive to move because your pension multiplier or you get an additional.
So right. So what the state of North Carolina did is they added the separation allowance. What it basically does is it simulates Social Security until Social Security age. So it's done at a multiplier of 0.85%. So it basically smooths their annual income.
Officer, and I am a construction supervisor. The advantage this person would get with Social Security at 62 or
shows that. So
Do we have an apples to apples comparison of going between these two slides, the employee contribution is employees contributing 12.65%. Then there's obviously the difference with putting into function is higher. But do we have a way to look and see over the lifetime of their, is the 54.6 for fire as the annual pension amount over the lifetime of their employment or not?
So let me answer that in a couple ways. The first is you're talking about Social Security. So when you net out the cost of Social Security plus Medicare, firefighters are contributing 14% and the others are contributing 13%. Moving to the next slide, what I can at the law enforcement officer and the Algers, they're very close once they get to Social Security. So in this example, a quick Social Security estimate would be about $17,000 at age 62, which puts it very close to a firefighter pension. The advantage to the firefighter is that they get it at age 50 rather than waiting until Social Security. So they're very close once you get past Social Security age. They do get the advantage, firefighters, before Social Security age.
Okay. Yeah, not now, but if you don't have. I think for the full picture, we need to factor in how much additional they've put in.
Then I don't understand. Evens out. Of the same amount, but as a police officer, you're 50 and you can retire as a police officer. I understand that equal amount at the same age with the same determination. Officer at 50 retiring.
So these aren't designed to be general employee. So in this scenario, they retire after 30 years. Say they're 55 years old. So from 55 to 62, that's what they get. Then they're going to pick up about $17,000 from Social Security, which gets them to about 55. So firefighters, while they can retire at 50, which is an advantage, but let's say they retire at 55 in this, they're going to get 55,000 all the way through. And then police officers, they're going to start at the 37, but also immediately get a $17,000 separation allowance. So they're also going to get the 55,000 from 55 all the way through.
Okay.
So they
Allowance is equal to practically Social Security.
Yep, it's intended to bridge from retirement until Social Security age.
Mr. Drakes.
You say it again?
Overtime, does that include?
Or any, is it just all overtime, like?
All. So the impact on police and general employees is a little bit less period of time. With fire, they see a little bit more of an impact because so when I mentioned the fire board kind of make sure that overtime stays in line because they have had a few outliers.
Have we audited? Done without some oversight and thoughtfulness or requirements?
Looked at, and I know the new fire chief is in
Ryan, to make sure that I'm reading this the correct way. You could have a scenario where someone is getting a good amount of overtime in the last 3 years or the last 2 years, and that would have an
Employee that doesn't work much overtime, very similar to this, and you might have another employee who works a lot of overtime.
Being done with oversight. Categories of employees getting certain categories of income. That's not what the intent is of this, and so I'm just that overtime budget, and it's just
If you read an article today, I couldn't tell you with Chief Johnson is working through. These is something that the retirement board understands the practice.
and for all three categories. This the same management review. I have Mayor Pro Tem and then Mr. Driggs.
Is there any kind of a trend in the nation to cap that ability to not to have overtime? I mean, you just think of the problems every state has right now with, there would be some discussion as to saying you can do overtime in your last 2 or 4 pension calculation.
There are a number of plans that have capped, but we're looking at it in a point in time, so I'm not sure of the trend. My guess would be yes, but I can't say. Consultation with the city and in consultation with the state, who actually asked to amend the act.
I wanted to mention, for one, there already has been investigative reporting things like that. I don't think it rises to the level of look like for the last 2 years compared to preceding years to get a feel for how much of an issue it is. Department and not to retirement aspirations of individuals.
So something that HR is concentrating on, consistent pay practices. And if there is what we've also asked HR to do is look at consistent overtime use. And if there is a consistent issue with overtime, then that's a to be split. There's a leadership and management issue, except in terms of emergencies when we have storms. So I imagine if we did the analysis this year, we've had several storms.
Issue, and when you get want people in working 80 hours a week. In the middle of the night, which I have seen Charlotte Water doing. We are looking at that as a management issue because we want to be.
Music just like
That's on our playlist today.
I can never
Okay.
unsee that, unfortunately.
So thank you for bringing that up. and management as well. Okay.
Was the question from earlier on, are there peer group of 20 cities? There are 3. So we have it broken out here between general employee, fire, and police. And the one with the yellow is where Charlotte employees currently reside. So our actuary was able to do an analysis, actuarial analysis, to compare within each of these groups. So the peer group for general employees would be 11, for fire 10, and for police 7. You will note here at the bottom, for general employees, there are 6 cities that have shifted away from a retirement plan that's a little bit riskier for the employees and more stable for the city. Charlotte has not done that in any of its plans. It's a little less common in police and fire, but there are a few cities there that have done so. So the comparison by the actuary, what they're doing is they're putting pay at the same level across all plans. So this is in no way trying to show what pay is amongst these cities, so there's no cost of living adjustments. This is simply the value of the pension for the same rate of pay. So what we're doing is we're taking a 25-year-old employee who's retiring at 55, which is the first retirement age in most of these plans. So there's a few slides here. We did put a lot into each slide, so I'll try to go slow and go through this.
I thought it was because of us.
So I always get these really fun assignments like revaluation and this and everything, but I'll do my best here. The City of Charlotte does compare very favorably for general employee plans. I should note that this does not include the 401k contribution that we do on top of this, because it's apples and oranges. So on top of having the second best out of the 11 in value, we also do the 401k contribution, and we're one of only 2 cities out of these 11 that does that for general employees. We also have an employee contribution that's lower than the median. This is a state-controlled plan which does not have a cost of living adjustment, but you'll notice that the one plan above us, which is way out west, it's not that the starting benefits are higher, it's that it does have an automatic cost of living adjustment, which North Carolina does not have. So moving on to firefighters. So I'm going to show firefighters 2 different ways, to be fair. I'm going to show them at 30 years like this, but then the next slide is going to show them at 25 years. Start off a little bit behind the median at 30 years. Their contribution rate's a little bit higher than the median, but they are one of 3 cities that gets a 401k contribution on top of their pension out of these 10, which helps to add a little bit of value. And then when we go to the next slide, which is also firefighters, but at 25 years, you can see that at 25 years, they do have quite a bit more value. So they're 3rd out of 10. And you'll see that the plans above them, other than this top one, which is out west and is sort of an outlier, the other 2 above them have cost of living adjustments automatically built in, which is what puts them beyond the city. One thing that is not able to be factored in here was what we did talk about, the fact that Charlotte's firefighter plan is one of 2 cities out of these 10 that only uses the top 2 years. That does allow for a little bit bigger increases due to overtime at the end of the career. So moving on to police. Police starts low. This is before the separation allowance. So I will show that the impact of that in a second. But it starts low. It has a employee contribution equal to the median. It's one of 3 out of 7 that do a 401k contribution, which would increase it. But then we look at the same slide, factoring in the separation allowance, and it does increase it. I have an example here of how the separation allowance is calculated. It's your final base salary, the years of service, and then a 0.85% multiplier. So that is a temporary payment from whatever age you retire at until age 62. And so you have to work 30 years to be eligible for that. But it does increase Charlotte a little bit. I would say that while we can't do the apples and oranges comparison, even if you only took the cash 401k contribution and assumed no interest, it would actually push the police plan above the median. So while you can't build it into the study, it is something that we do that most of the police plans do not do. So the final slide, the relevant findings. Charlotte's one of 14 cities who does a 401k contribution one of 14 cities who has not shifted any of its groups to the riskier plans for employees. We're one of only 2 cities that do a 401k contribution for all groups on top of a regular pension. And then below that, it has where Charlotte's employees rank within their peer group for police, for fire, and for general employees. And as I mentioned, the ranks at the bottom do not count the 401k contributions.
Ms. Mayfield.
Actually, going back to the previous slide, and this is just for clarification. So we have an example out there where people have overtime, and that overtime changed their base salary. Put some specific parameters around that to help address that. So looking at this example moving forward, base salary should actually relate it.
Correct. So for separation allowance specifically, it's only base salary, and that's state.
If they had the overtime.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Drake.
So the Alger, I do have that. In FY20, 8.9 police, those are the employer contributions, and the employee side is 6%.
Because as a result of investment performance, what is the outlook in terms of the contributions we have to make to
moderate because status is good. I do have across all of these cities, and the median funding status was 76%, 7.6%. So because our funding status is very solid, which is solid, the employer contribution hasn't increased a whole lot. But in this past year, from FY19 to FY20, like you referred to, it's going to go up by 1.2. It's actions like that that we support because
are in a plan that has higher risk for the city.
Our plans for our pension plans assume no risk from investment return.
This 1 point.
It's to be 0.25, and it went to 1.2.
And that's for every participant in counties as well, right?
Everybody, yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
So
Total benefits comparison, total compensation and benefits comparison. We're going to show where we stack up in healthcare and some other benefits. So this was kind of the missing piece on for council.
right, because we had a couple of takeaways from the compensation analysis.
Correct. So it controls 2 of the plans, and then we have a board to work with on our 1 locally controlled.
No problem, I mean, not a problem. Representatives of the city. That's, I think, what I took away from this.
Including the OT.
Yeah. All right.
It's about workplace environment, it's all the other stuff that we provide. So, Mr. Driggs, you asked about the takeaway. And we also did the Pierce city comparison. 3-year performance.
Hey, good afternoon. So jumping right its component of our employer plans moving forward to achieve some of the goals that have been set forth for us. Strategy from around 1994 to middle of the road benefits, and I think we were successful in achieving that. Our benefit offerings. So in reflection of that, we're looking to provide employees access to different types. One person needs may not be what someone else needs. So we do that employees can pick and choose what they need. That are offered to city employees. There are, as you can see, dozens of benefits offered. We're primarily going to talk about healthcare today, but on the left-hand part of this slide, these are benefits that are provided that the employer pays some portion of the cost to those benefits. On the right-hand side, you'll see the additional benefits that employees can choose to layer on based on the needs that they have and are fully paid for by the employee. So this ranges from medical to prescription drug, life insurance, our wellness program, diabetes program, our 401k, our 457, and then on the right-hand side to the voluntary benefits such as hospital indemnity and critical illness and the 457 plans. So a very robust overall package. We'll focus at this point on healthcare, and I'm going to run through some trends just to catch everyone up to speed. We had some conversation in the Budget Effectiveness Committee meeting around the healthcare piece, so we want to share that with the full council so that you can see where we are. This slide shows you the medical and pharmacy trend over time for the city of Charlotte. The lighter green color is the national trend, both for medical and pharmacy, and then the darker green color is the city's trend. You'll see we've had some good years and we've had some bad years over time. Most importantly, though, the last few years have been very positive years for the city based on trend. That is primarily in part due to the MyClinics and to the pharmacy rebidding that happened in 2017.
Yes. If you go back, Mayor Pro Tem and Mr. Eggleston have a question.
What's that measuring? Thank you. I'm not sure. What
This is measuring now the cost of healthcare in the U.S.
cost of healthcare. Now,
Like average cost is paying?
No, this is the
No.
total cost of health.
Are
The city's healthcare, medical, and ours has decreased.
to the city or to the employees?
No, 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 this is just a general average. 10% and our cost overall, and I'm assuming that's both city, the city down or has been as a trend.
It is.
So the total cost,
It's claims data.
claims data.
There's a bill, that's what you said.
Explaining, the city is self-insured, so the city and cost of the services provided, so it's those costs that are being measured.
Correct. So this slide will show you, based on our about a year and a half in advance. So we're looking at calendar year 2020 already at this point, and we're only in 2019. So our projections are very far in advance, but what this is showing you, based on what we project that far in advance, historically what our actuals end up being are very close together. This slide will show you how our personal, how the city's cost for medical and pharmacy claims on a per employee per month basis have started to trend down since the implementation of the clinic. So you can see that upward trend, and then in 2016, that is starting to come down. And again, that is a positive impact both for the employee and for the city. This slide demonstrates the overall cost of our expenses for medical and pharmacy, and the portion that the city is paying overall, and the portion that the employees are paying overall. So you can see here we've consistently had around a 70-30 split, even with the plan design changes that happened in 2018. In fact, the city picked up a larger portion of the share of the total cost last year. This information shows you the percent of our plan members and the amount of the cost that they're driving. So on the left-hand side, you can see the membership. Employees make up about 49.6% of the membership. Spouses make up about 15.5% of the membership, and children then make up the remaining about 35%. On the right-hand side, it's showing you what are the percentage of their claims cost. So employees are half the population, and they make up over about half of the spend on the medical and the pharmacy. Spouses, on the other hand, are about 15% of the claims cost, or 15% of the membership, and they're making up about 26% of the cost. And then children, historically, and this remains true here, they're 40% of the membership, but they're only making up 17% of the cost. So children don't cost very much. The reason this is important, this is how this breakdown has been for years. This is what drove some decisions in 2018 to change the premium structure, because employees and employee children, the two areas that are not the highest cost, were subsidizing employee spouse and employee families, because spouses are costing a larger percentage of the total cost than they make up.
So I think the question is why?
Do we know that? Yeah.
How do you, is it just it's just claims data here that spouses are making that?
The plan members.
I didn't.
So that shows you to combat that, or to mitigate that, or to provide benefit to employees is one through the MyClinic. So I'll share with you at this point our spouses, children, and retirees. So we brought this idea to City Council back in 2015. It was a radical idea at the time. You were fully supportive of it. And what I'm going to walk you through here is where we are now, 4 years later, now that we've implemented. But the reason we wanted to bring MyClinic was so that we could enhance the patient experience for employees, improve the management of chronic conditions, because that's what's driving cost. We could redirect care from inappropriate settings to more appropriate settings. So for example, instead of going to the emergency room for a migraine at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you could go to MyClinic instead. We thought we could improve health outcomes of our population and then reduce lost work time and absenteeism. My clinic provides a variety of services, from primary care to urgent care, sick care, a full wellness suite with coaching, diabetes supplies. They offer medications. I think the medication piece is one that employees very much like because there are about 150 medications on that formulary, and most of them are free. They do provide pediatric care, and then also on-site labs. Again, these services are free to those that are on our plan. There is a small copay for some sick care visits in our HSA plan, so that's regulated by the IRS. But overall, all of this is pretty much free.
Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So when we're looking at for women, it's considered my clinic. Seem like that a gynecologist, a specialist, copay amount. So somewhere, not today, but somewhere it would be helpful to understand how that change will
Field of medicine. Now, if you're using that if you're going to your gynecologist, as long as you're within the scope of what the Affordable Care Act, then that is covered at 100%. Now, if you continue to go to that specialist for something else, or if during your annual physical something else occurs, I'm sure you've seen the sign when we're going to charge you a copay. At that point, it does then revert to a specialist copay. Well, women's services at the clinic for free.
All right, Mayor, you good?
Allowed from other providers, what does that mean?
So if you go to your provider and you or co-insurance, depending on the plan that you're in, if you take that lab or results to your physician, and there will be no charge to you.
Your blood panels every year, whatever.
Yeah, your doctor. Okay. So when we embarked upon this, we asked 4 questions to drive performance and outcomes for this. And the first is, if we make the investment, will people use the clinic? They absolutely will use the clinic. We have about 80% employee utilization of the clinic. About 50% of our spouses are using the clinic, and about 35% of our retirees, which is an increase over last year, so that's an area we're going to continue to drive utilization. If they use it, will they have a superior experience? I can confirm that as well, because the utilization has steadily increased year over year. If people use it and have a good experience, are the health metrics improving? That too has come to fruition, and we can see that through that claims data and trend data. As you know, costs are going down, folks are getting healthier. And then if the health metrics are improving, has there been a savings? We expected this to take about 3 to 5 years. A little past the 3-year mark, we were able to provide some outcomes, which I'll share with you. So you can see in the top chart here, this is the impact of my clinic on medical plan cost to the health plan. So the clinic cost in 2016 were about $3.8 million. You can see over time they've grown to about $4.5 million. The health plan cost avoidance, this is saying if we had taken 85% of the services that were completed in my clinic and we had run them through the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan and they had been paid out into the community, this is what it would have cost the plan. The reason that's not at 100% is because we know some people go to the clinic who otherwise wouldn't have sought care, but I do think it's a very conservative estimate and is likely higher. So you can see the plan avoided about $3.3 million of cost in 16, $4.4 million in 17, and $4.7 almost in 2018. So with the net savings, the first 2 years we were having to pay in to the clinic. It wasn't solvent yet, but we've shown that in 2018 it is flat. The bottom slide, though, I think is more compelling. This is what the clinic is saving employees in out-of-pocket cost. So the first line around clinic payments, in 2017 and 18, everything at the clinic was free, so employees didn't pay anything to use it. In 2018 is when we introduced the health savings accounts, which require us to charge for sick care. So this is $12,000. Those are the $30 copays that we've collected for the sick care. So the cost avoidance here is similar as above. For those that had gone to the clinic, this is what they would have paid in copays, deductibles, coinsurance, prescription drugs, if they had sought services out into the health plan. This is money out of their pocket. So then that net savings bringing us to 2018 of $1.4 million to employees.
So I have Mr. Eggleston, Mr. Phipps, and Mr. Driggs.
Do we know what percentage of city employees have utilized My Clinic to date?
About 80%.
80 employees have utilized My Clinic to date?
About 80%.
80%?
80%. Folks through incentive design. So yeah.
Success of the My Clinics. Are there any plans to expand my are those plans progressing?
Yes, great question. So the clinic is a their population, and then there's a portion of the expansion of providers and hours. The next employer, if it's a decent community partners, would
much better this is, and the proposal that was actually initially adopted, you remember?
Yes, I do.
We looked at the avoidance by a substantial amount for a couple of years. I've seen this huge now that it's created, so I just want to congratulate every just employee satisfaction.
Thank you.
Great success story.
Thank you.
This last year update on this, I didn't understand how we got. You have an 80% clip of participation. That's pretty good. That's very good. We're totally out of the red. That's great. Is it for County and Harris Teeter? Can we then savings with higher participation, higher access?
Well, we will be recontracting. So we have a 5-year. We are instrumental in facilitating employers joining into the clinic relation into 2019.
And we should. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
You said that's for 2019. I'm hoping, trying to figure out going into the market and them coming to the table, because ultimately of the city of Charlotte, and having a 1 year versus that 5 year. To get these other partners to come to the table. Thank you.
Did you have?
The graph around does that percentage of claims data get more detailed? Is it more for wellness visits?
That's not in this presentation, but we can certainly provide that.
I don't know if anyone else cares about that, but I'd just be interested.
Year over year with the implementation of the clinic. Hours of my clinic, and we do targeted mailings around that. And then also off hours. So we do try to outreach. We've added a clinical and to do direct phone outreach to
Talked about it initially, was expected to lead to more locations. In terms of time, waiting times and things like that. So how is that unfolding?
To the year where we've seen a large increase. 1-1. We have not seen in the first quarter. I mean, we do have in our performance guarantees metrics for bring that with the increase of participation.
Right. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Phipps?
Yeah, on Mr. Driggs's point, I can recall when I think the mayor was there too, the tenor of the discussion, the don't go anywhere, almost like it was going to. Now we have a success story, so it's really.
Okay. So in addition to my clinic, the other. So if you go back to 2017, we had 2 health plans, one of which was frozen, so new employees could not get into that plan. So I like to tell folks we had 1.5 plans, but we only had one you could really get into, and that was that basic plan. And so due to the diverse nature of our workforce and the needs that they have, we wanted to provide a lineup of plans to give you options. Options for coverage, options for premium points, options for ways to pay for your health care now and in the future. So we went to a 5-plan lineup to provide that choice, offering 2 health savings account plans, 1 PPO with a health reimbursement account, and then 2 traditional PPOs. The impact that had was that most employees had an opportunity to reduce their premium. At the same time, most employees had an opportunity to choose a plan with a higher value than they previously had access to. These new plans provided employees a choice of deductibles so they could choose based on their healthcare needs, and then those health savings accounts provided an opportunities for employees to pay for their current and future retiree medical expenses since the loss of retiree medical. In addition to the 5-plan lineup, our strategy has been to add value through additional health plan choices that you can layer in. So you've got the clinic, as we discussed, the health savings accounts. Those are great because they can help you pay for expenses now, but they can also help pay for things that aren't covered by the plan. They can pay for dental and vision expenses. They have a variety of things that they can be used for to increase the value of your health plan. We also introduced voluntary benefits, so the accident, critical illness, and hospital indemnity insurance. These benefits pay you cash. So instead of taking a traditional approach and just looking at deductibles and plan design, which only impact an employee when they use services, these types of plans, not only can they help pay that deductible and out-of-pocket and medical expenses, they can also help pay your other expenses due to your hospitalization or your injury. So it provides a bigger benefit when married to a medical plan. And then through the wellness program, helping folks get healthy and stay healthy, again, has an overall impact on cost. So now that you know where our strategy has come and where we are today, the next piece of this is looking at our comparison to the peer cities. Here are the 20 peer cities. These are the same 20 cities that have been referenced in the two earlier presentations today. We did include Mecklenburg County and Raleigh in the comparison so that we could see where we benchmarked against them as well. I will tell you, one city declined to participate, and another city does a defined contribution, so they give you $10,000 and you can spend it however you want, or you can take it and pay. So we did not include their information in the study. So the comparison methodology was one using actuarial values. When comparing medical plans, it's comparing apples and oranges, quite frankly, because again, there are a lot of different plan designs, different layers of benefits that you can add. There's narrowed network strategies where you limit choice, but that can increase the value of the plan. There's the strategy that we took to provide free health care through the clinic. So the actuarial value is how you get down to the best comparison that you can get of medical plans just based on plan design. So what this means is they're taking, on average, a health plan's total benefit and comparing it to another health plan's total benefit in terms of what it would pay. So one plan may pay 90% of the total cost, another plan may pay 80% of that total cost, another plan 70 or 60% of the total cost. But again, it's only talking about the plan design, deductibles, coinsurance, copays. It's not talking about any of the other components that could add value to a plan. What I've provided for you in the middle here is the Affordable Care Act tiers, just to give you some point of reference. So on the healthcare marketplace, those plans are evaluated by their actuarial value. And they have a bronze, silver, gold, and platinum status based on the value that they have. So the bronze plans out there on the exchange are ones that are providing minimal level of benefits, but essential benefits. Those in the silver and gold, that 70 and 80%, are providing moderate level of benefits, and then those on the platinum are providing a very rich level of benefit. And the footnote here that the clinic value is not included in the comparison that we'll walk through, but it is estimated to add about 4% of value to the plan. So you can see here the city's 5 plans for 2018 and the corresponding actuarial value. So Plan A is at 74%, Plan B at 86%, Plan C at 75%, Plan D at 70%, and Plan E at 80%. So all of our plans fall within the ACA silver or gold tiers on the exchange. There were some plan enhancements that were made in 2019 that increased the actuarial value of Plan D. For the purpose of this study, only 2018 plans were compared. So some enhancements were made in 19, which would improve our position at this point. What's not included is that free health care that you're getting at the clinic. What also isn't included is the hospital indemnity and accident plans that will help you pay your deductible and your medical expenses, and then the fact that our plans have broad networks. So many of the plans that were reviewed have narrowed networks. You can only go to one hospital, you can only go to this group of providers. Our plans provide choice. You can go to both hospital systems, and you have a very large network that you can choose from. That provides value that isn't captured in the AVs. So if you look at the overall actuarial value of the plans for those 20 peer cities, you will see on the PPO plans that our plans fall slightly below the median of the peer cities. However, if you factor in that additional MyClinic value, that brings us up much closer to the median. On our HSA plans, Plan B is right there at the median, and then Plan A is lower. When you look at the cost share for the PPO plan, so cost share is the percentage of the premium, that weekly amount that employees are paying, the percentage that the city's paying, and the percentage the employee's paying. So this slide shows you the percentage that the city pays. So on our employee-only PPO plans, the city is paying about 83 to 86% of the total cost for those plans. We're right below the median on Plan C and D and slightly below on Plan E.
So let me ask if I'm reading this chart correctly, that if I had an employee and we were at the 85%, the family in terms of the financial for at a
Premium, so this doesn't relate to the values.
For seeing they are paying a higher value than the employee only for the premium. I'm trying to.
I think it's
I'm
saying
trying
the
to-
city is paying a higher percentage of the actual employees' costs and a lower.
Yes, yes. So
Typical, is that across the board what people?
side on the left, a couple of them paying 100% of the employer. On the family side, you can see that cluster then. Employers, and that if you're going to cover your family members, you're going to pay more towards the premium for that coverage.
And that is industry standard?
That is industry standard.
Got it. That's
Yes.
all. Yes?
I just wanted to say about that, if you didn't do something like that, it would discriminate against
Right.
people, right, who are not married or don't have dependents. So the idea is not to create a disparity based on family.
And one note on the Plan E, so that one increased their contribution to that.
Dr. Harlow?
On the employer cost, they're still kind of below in comparison either way. And, you know, I guess our percentage of sharing costs in that plan in comparison to these other municipalities.
Comparison to these peer cities, yes.
Okay.
So this is the portion that the employer, the city, is paying the premium on these plans. On the HSA plan, you can see the median right there is about 90%. On Plan A, employee only, the city's paying more than that. On Plan B, employee only, the city's paying less than that. On the family plans, the median is around that 85%. In Plan A and B, the city is paying less than that in the cost share. And again, on the family plans, this was a strategic decision related back to that slide that I showed you, where spouses are a smaller percentage of our population. However, they're driving more of the cost. So the value enhancements that were made in 2019 that were not a part of the study are that there were no increases to employee premiums in 2019. The deductible out-of-pocket max on Plan D was changed. That improved the value of that plan by 5%. The family premium on E was also reduced by 10%. We added additional services at my clinic, and then we also added comprehensive firefighter medical exams during 2019. So again, that actuarial value comparison is about as apples to apples as you can get, but there are a lot of other components that layer onto a plan that increase its overall value. Bless you. So moving on to other benefits, the dental highlights, 9 of the 20 cities that we looked at provide an employer contribution to a dental plan. The city provides a $26 contribution to the dental plan weekly. Our Plus plan has a 61% AV, and our Basic is at 46%. The median of the plans that we looked at was right at 61, so you can see we're right there in line with the median on that plus plan. On short-term,
Dr. Harlow.
They're gonna get a dental question from me. This, just basic, what percentage, we know that, I mean, medical's basically required for everyone to opt into at this point, but what percentage
opt into dental.
really good? That's good.
He'd like to know the 20% that aren't.
Right, who are the 20 that?
Oh, that's in our vision to add that to it at some point.
That'd be a conflict of interest.
So extended sickness or injury that is non-work related. The typical duration of this is about 26 weeks. Charlotte pays 100% of the premium for this benefit, so employees are provided this as a benefit to them, and we are only one of 3 cities that are paying the full cost of this benefit. Our current benefit in 2018 during the study was that it was 50% of weekly earnings. It now in 2019 has been enhanced to 60% of weekly earnings. Our basic life insurance benefit is also paid at 100% by the city. 19 cities in the study also pay 100% of that basic life benefit. Our 2018 benefit was 2 times annual salary. You can see here there are 3 that offer 2 times annual salary, with 11 offering less, and 5 offering a flat amount. On vacation leave, you can see the median at the top, and then Charlotte right there underneath. So the first line is showing you the hours that you accrue when you start employment with the city. So in your first year of employment, you would accrue 80 hours. At the 10-year mark, you would accrue 144 hours. And then for the city, at the 14-year mark, you would begin accruing 160 hours. We are off from the median here. However, what was not looked at was what was the max accrual time period. So for some of these cities, you would hit the max at 20 years or at 25 years. The other thing that was not looked at with these cities is there a max payout? So the impact to the organization when you leave, whether that's termination or retirement, we're paying out your vacation. So that may be one reason why this has been set at 160.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
clarification on this. Are we also looking at, some companies have basically use it or lose it. At the end of the year, you get maybe 3 more. I don't know if it's all over the city or just some departments where you can. Now, are we having conversations, and it may be a question for the manager, accrue 100 or the last year of work, they just.
You can only carry over 2.5 times your accrual. So there is so you don't lose it completely, but we don't pay towards service credit at the time of retirement.
What does that mean?
You can actually retire with a 30-year benefit at 28 years.
2 years of anything.
That's a retirement system provision.
For you to explain to me how we let something roll over into something else and have them. When they cash out vacation time, that also. Okay.
Owner saying you have vacation time, it's take as much as you want. And they found out that people weren't taking very much at all. It's after giving them unlimited, they worked all the time instead. It's- Okay.
Okay. So moving on to sick leave. Block here, there are 13 cities that provide 12 days of sick leave annually. So we are well within range. On parental leave, we provide a 6-week paid benefit per calendar year. We are again in the tall block here of the 7 cities that provide at least, or that provide 6 weeks of paid parental leave, with some cities below and some cities above.
And that's
Mr. Eggleston?
the same for our male employees and female employees?
Yes. Other benefits that were looked at include tuition reimbursement. 16 cities, including us, offer tuition reimbursement. 6 cities offer longevity pay to new hires. 14 cities, including Charlotte, have transit discounts.
Do we do longevity pay?
We no longer do longevity
Oh,
pay.
that's, I just, it said 6 cities, so I wasn't know if we were in there.
8 cities offer some level of buyback. This is a vacation sell type of program. 6 cities offer some sort of child care program or subsidy. And then 2 cities have a loan forgiveness program.
Okay.
On holidays, again, we're right there with everyone else, with 10 cities that provide 11 holidays annually, and 7 cities offering 1 to 2 more days, and the other 5 cities offering less. So the overall study findings showed that Charlotte does have some healthcare plans that are near the median and some that are below. The study design did not include that MyClinic, which would increase those values right off the top at about 4%. It also did not include our plan enhancements or the value adds from our network and other programs that we have. Our other employer-paid benefits, the life insurance, short-term disability, dental, holiday, and leave, are aligned, or they are actually better than the peer cities, and that our overall leave benefits are in line with the peer cities as well. So our considerations for 2020, first is to look at enhancing the value of that HSA Plan A, so that was the outlier plan on the AVs, to mitigate medical plan premium increases, so this would again help that cost share piece. Eliminate Plan C due to a lack of participation in that plan. That's that middle plan. It only has about 200 people enrolled in it at this point. We're also looking at enhancing the dental plan options that we have and making enhancements within the plan. So looking at adult orthodontia, for instance. We're exploring a hearing loss benefit to add to our lineup. Reviewing the city's leave incentive for unused sick leave, as well as looking at additional voluntary insurances for employees, and then finally a 529 college plan payroll deduction program.
Mr. Eggleston?
One small question and one bigger one. By consolidating the number of plans we have from 5 to 4, is there a cost savings for the city?
Very similar to
I'm just
that would just
wondering
be
for those
absorbed.
200 employees, if they deem that to be the best option for their family, be a benefit for the state, something that was deemed to be the best option for 200 people, I would think.
Many of the folks in that plan don't understand how that much like a PPO would have, but can't because they misunderstood how that plan worked. I think, that plan was initially pitched because
It's not 200 people that love Plan C and are going to be upset.
absolutely not. And in fact, we would do them, make alternative plan option choices.
Okay, and my larger philosophical question. Data for us to compare ourselves to these other cities as we set our in Charlotte, though, because I would think that our employees are less likely to likely to compare their benefits and pay with their neighbor who works for Bank of America. We are going to attract people from in this region, so or health, that's maybe
was around 2011, so it's been about 8 years. Charlotte, along with a couple of competing municipalities. This study was designed and the comparison to be looked at.
I had Ms. Mayfield next.
Can we? Okay, so we have a slide that you don't have up there.
That slide?
That's the one I was looking for. It's 3 slides. Thank you. Other benefits, the longevity pay. So, question is, these other benefits, are these some of the things that we're considering? Because I didn't see as far as moving forward, or are you just letting us know this is what some other cities? Because I'm looking at the child care programs and Durham, possibly Durham and some other cities have in considerations.
So this particular slide is just intended to demonstrate additional benefits that. So we had us to say we want to offer this or we don't want to offer that. I'll say the longevity pay we used to offer. Yes, ma'am. The child care piece, we actually are of options, similar to what Starbucks is doing. Data recommendations, but they're not currently complete for this.
It will be that you shared it a little bit, so helpful if we're looking at more than one or two of the other, or comparing, just so that we can get an idea of the direction prior to it coming before us in a full record.
That on our own, so leadership hasn't been made aware that we're looking at that currently to provide that.
The list there that the manager is basically saying all of this is on the is if by implementing changes, are we making things more employees or helping us with our recruitment or retention? Some of these things, if they particularly apply, it comes to mind, but I certainly know and understand. I'd much rather add that as their option versus having. So next. So very much, particularly those that are in our community neighborhood. In 10 minutes.
And we needed
I
enough.
said can fill. And we always know that.
Bill could do this in 10 minutes, but I'm also going to invite.
I'm sure she's grateful.
coming around. But I also want to highlight that there's a thicker packet of information that if there's not specific information on a slide, it very well may be in the more detailed document. Okay. Ms. Weidman and I are going to give you an overview of the financial partner process. Specifically, we're going to highlight the agencies that applied for financial partner funding, and we'll review the agency requests. But I want to sort of make clear on the forefront, we're not making a recommendation today. We're just providing you the information of the agencies that applied. The recommendation will come back as a part of the city manager's budget recommendation in May. So let's just start and level set. What are financial partners? And financial partners are agencies that the city is contracted with, specifically to provide services that support key areas of focus for the city. So they're like providing an extension of services for the city. They contribute to the community enrichment, and in Ms. Weidman's case, she'll talk about partners that support departmental service needs as well. We generally categorize these in 4 categories. These categories are around funding sources, and so we have financial partners that fall under the general fund discretionary. We have financial partners that have dedicated revenue sources, partners that are funded by federal grants, partners that are funded by our PAYGO, capital PAYGO account, and then we have a category of partners that are actually a combination of federal grants and PAYGO. I'm going to talk about the first 2 categories, and Ms. Weidman's going to talk about the second 2. And so I just want to highlight an overall, the process that financial partners go through. These are like providing grants, and so we ask our partners to submit information like anybody would submit for a grant. The process that I have here support all the financial partners except for out-of-school time partners, which Ms. Weidman will talk about, and she'll talk about the process that out-of-school time partners go to in a later part of the presentation. So generally in October, financial partners are made aware that that it's time to apply for financial partner funding. And so we provide a link on our website. We send out letters to our current financial partners. We also notify financial partners that have had interest in the past, and we've had financial partners that have been referred to us from council members, and we reach out to them as well. Those applications are generally due in December. This year, we actually extended the deadline. We had some things come up that required an extension, and so we did that for all of them. And then in April, we come back to City Council like we are today, and we give you a summary of the partners that have applied, and then the recommended funding will be in the manager's recommended budget, and in June, council would vote on a budget which would include financial partner funding. So just to summarize, in the general fund discretionary portion or category of financial partners, we had 9 agencies apply for financial partners. 6 of those agencies are existing financial partners. We have 3 new agencies. And you can see the Arts and Science Council applied, the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, which was formerly the Charlotte Regional Partnership, applied, the Community Business Initiative applied, Safe Alliance, Tree Charlotte, the YMCA of Greater Charlotte, which is administering the My Brother's Keeper program, and then we had Intech Foundation's Junior Achievement and Women's Business.
Mayor,
Can we go back? Ms. Mayfield, yes?
when are we gonna have time, and in what committee do we actually break down and discuss all of these requests?
Excellent question for Mr. Jones.
So, Mayor, members of council, made before I presented the budget.
Oh, no, sir.
And so it's your budget then, and it's whatever you decide.
So, still on my question. Historically, yes, there will be an ad on why we want to add or delete something. Having something presented to us with names, so,
You
no.
have the packet with
No.
you.
Okay.
You
I
mean,
get-
tell what you mean by background so that
Okay.
we can all understand.
So, receiving, before anything was printed on any paperwork with any council to even know opposed to prior to you presenting us with the budget, when these, but also a discussion regarding new funding requests or the additional seem like a small amount, but we had conversations about the fact that we funded one, not the other. Y'all combining. I'm trying to figure out, when do we get to delve into this?
Right now.
I think I understand what Ms. Mayfield is saying is.
I'm
we're
hoping
getting
the
an
man-
people with some concerns.
We need to make sure we avoid at all costs what we did last year, which was shouting out names of things.
Right.
So, I agree with not a first time hearing it, but also maybe some way to work through some stuff like that. That should be getting routed through some. This one organization, we throw it out, like literally, if we
Or
avoid
bring
one
in a
thing
new-
this budget process, it needs to be that.
Or bring in a new one at the. All right, Mr. Jones, I'm just going to say, let's listen.
Sure.
And then you.
Sure.
Worse than battle got funded because I couldn't
straw
see them
poll.
all. So I ended up voting against all of them, including my own pet projects, just on principle if we couldn't. Phenomenal organizations that we would love to help all of them. And so I've got,
No, not the next budget process.
no, but I'm saying like, to Ms. Mayfield's point, next budget process, we can't change that we got.
Oh, yeah, we can change this one.
Wait.
We can't
Now,
change what
wait,
happened before
I
today.
got you, Miss.
Unless you. Before April 3rd, 2019.
Okay.
Request, and then when these are laid out as, well, they're now a cut, even though it wouldn't be a cut to their former fund. Like they have to, like they're cutting me from a very deserving nonprofit, or they're picking us all debating each other on which ones should get money and which ones shouldn't, and I would love.
Mrs. Phipps, what would you?
Application process that the partners presented and their raw request, right? So in your recommended budget, what you think that, that we should list down, and this is their raw list, but it hasn't been vetted through. It'll be something less than this, and then it comes to us.
Correct.
So I don't know where, and try to vet these raw numbers.
I think you just have one more person express. Ms. Mayfield.
Applications, when I'm looking at the previous 2 or 3 slides before this, lengthy period of time here, we could have had some council blindsided.
Okay.
If we're saying that these are all conversation, if what is being said is here is going to say, according to a step that was missed, and that was the step where council talks about. One of these organizations that puts a name next to a number on any deal. For those that have been around this dais for any period of time, discussion when it came time for us to dialogue whether or not it falls in the add and deletes. Helpful to understand how something that clearly should fall into CMS for the city. When we have had conversations focusing our areas and getting back into the business of the city, because CMS is in a different position. They have some problems. There's a time that we can give them back. So it will be helpful again. Impression that, hey, this is done. We have done that. We have been there.
I have one more person. Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I think to that point, you know, the mayor's redone our committees, so it would be great to have another box to, I don't know.
Yeah, that would be
Well,
helpful.
we stated them at, you know, we talked about them at the retreat, so how, you know, the Arts and Science Council, for example, what's
Because that is one of those, like Ed asked me about the transit discussions. These things are moving. Council members are very concerned about count the city for funding, and time we have some tradition for 20 years. I mean, Arts and Science Council, we've always funded, but I don't think that the staff could come in. Mr. Jones, the question is, what do you do, what the council wants to avoid and I really well thought out. And so what do we do about that with your recommendation? So
Absolutely. So to council members, all all, nothing's been screened out. I can do to stop what happened last year. Last year, it's to the point that has happened every year I've been here. And this year is to apply. So if everybody agrees with that, and anybody who was in play last year, we made it very clear to them, to get back in play, you had to apply. What we did differently this year is we didn't do recommendations because we just want you to get the information as is. And I think you have everything that was submitted, and this is where we are. And so Phil was
Who received funding this application.
Absolutely.
So nobody could come now and say, well, I didn't.
We said, if you want to get in play, this is the only gate.
All right, then I feel a lot better about it.
And then I think what Mr. Jones is priorities for him to consider, and you met the deadline, which his recommendation would come forward based on to give him some guidance about that.
Absolutely.
All right, Mr. Phipps?
Yeah. But didn't meet the criteria in the final analysis.
As far as I know,
Every organization that applies, we're showing you tonight.
No, he didn't say qualified.
There are two,
Just in theory, if they
but
haven't
they're
been
on
in
the
business
list.
3 years, they would
Everybody did
qualify.
apply.
We created it.
When, is that the policy for out of school?
We created it for any new partners in order to make sure there's stability in that organization.
If that was where we did that, and, I mean, I'm not sure that all of these people would qualify, but. Right, I think we need to pull out any list that says here's, and if it's 3 years, it's 3 years. No, I actually, I think the summary on the page the only ones that we're not familiar with I've had 1 or 2 meetings, and I know that other people on the council Duval yesterday on My Brother's Keeper. So that might be one that we need to really learn more about and actually have some I think the question is, do you want staff to go through the ones
What's our plan for, Mr. Phipps had at different points talked, but is this our opportunity?
No,
And our only opportunity.
Committee
I didn't
meetings
get it.
or full council?
What kinds of meetings were those? Full council?
So let's walk applications and go through them. So we'll follow up memo on the criteria. Mr. Driggs?
I think it's relevant to ask what capacity you think we have to accommodate these requests, because we could end up, making tough choices
fund balance.
What's your, how much have you earmarked in your budget for all of this? Because you've got about 2 million plus of increases and new requests in there. Including someone else?
He's going to
or-
make a recommendation first. Then our priorities. He's going to give an see his assessment as being off the mark.
All right, so council's familiar with Arts and Science Council. They are our agency that supports and advocates for cultural community. They're asking for an additional request of $250,000, and specifically their application listed that they wanted to enhance their cultural vision grants that they offer to the community. They wanted to support Studio 345, and they wanted to apply the $250,000 to their general operating support.
So Marcus and I, go back, I'm just going to quickly, Marcus and I had a conversation with Dina and the chair, and they are doing a poll to put before a bond referendum. Wants to do a referendum on the Arts and Science Council, presented to the commissioners. We're not going to win. The commissioners have to deal with what thing. That's another thing. And then the Arts and Science Council has asked for $20 million of it, and then there'd be $30 million that they would have. I think that that's something. The other priorities. The County Commission has 5 priorities. Is libraries, racial equity, and human services. Is that right? But I think that they're looking at that. Decision will be made in, I believe. All right, Mayor. If it passes, even the other comment I wanted to make aside from that polling, the fund. So we are. I think the question is, I've always supported the arts. Application is, I don't, but Ms. Mayfield is on the board. She represents by asking Robert or the. I think I would be looking for a plan. If the county does not put as a council, those are the 2 options I would need. Any other questions that the manager needs to query? Mr. Driggs.
1,000 increase, does that cover outside agency list?
Yeah,
It's up there.
yeah.
So
Detail what we got shows financial partner and outside this current fiscal year and 0.
Studio 345 not apply to be an out-school time.
So that Mr. Jones.
So council had problems with if this is designed restraints or the constraints of the previous. So Pam, can you help me out with the?
Are correct. They did not apply to if they intend to make up.
This description is tried to summarize the item. Said how they were going to use the additional $250,000.
It appears that they did.
Because some of the increases.
Right. I just wanted to be forthcoming. We did not have a conversation with them, but.
Phil, that's the question.
So, Mayor, members of council, the conversation around the Studio 345 was how much of this was going towards operating support and how much of this is really operations and how much of this is the 345.
Okay.
So, Mayor, I got a question directly on this. For a recommendation for financial support. We just never done it. Where in the conversation went on prior to having it in the
that ought to be with the man. I remember Julie was on the board and she would come in and she'd say, I think it's some of this is initiative. We've never had a that your impression of what they're working on will be a valuable assistance. This is the to join in, and even like if you're on the Blumenthal, or another organizer, sit down with the manager and have that conversation, because this is an evolving. Mayor Pro Tem?
So I think like in-tech support, I don't know, that might have been somebody on our council who's a board member. And support it and what's going on and
especially
so you, Ms. Mayfield, you're involved. No, I think is really helpful. Idea what they're doing.
Go with the people that you know and identify. Yes, Ms. Dr. Harlow and Ms.
Also, or if we're also looking into that, and maybe we know the answer already, when we look at these funding requests, whether it's a new group or an existing group that like Safe Alliance that we've been of their operating budget or their agency's total budget that, you know,
It's a part of the budget analysis. So in other words, it's easier with, let's say, CDBG funds, where you know how much should be overhead. So when we start to analyze this, I think as a council, you funding all of their staff. So that's a part of this internal review process during the evaluation.
And you have to remember, Safe Alliance used to be called Victims Assistance, and they've been around for 20 taxes that as aligned with for the general fund ones, like you said, CBDG, there are a lot more rules because of the amount, the restrictions, and all of that.
And Mayor, on page policies that this, or that a previous council, they're specific to out-of-school time partners. And so I think the mayor is financial partners. These policies don't bullet, you'll see the 33% partner contribution should not be more.
And
Just for clarity.
clarification on
Intech one that, went there, that we use.
Scour the books and the history to see if there's anything that we can find, but my understanding is general fund discretionary is general fund discretion.
Metrics will be astounding, and others we won't know anything about.
I believe we also have an opportunity here to read us to where we are with out-of-school time.
Right.
One, that there's no organization.
Right.
So that is regarding how sustainable are you? And also giving you a window where government dollars will be reduced in order to some of these requests that we're seeing by coming through general fund dollars, because some are going through out of school time, but because of the parameters of out of school time, they applied and it went into now to really look at just outside funding, period. And not doing a high percentage, whether it's a current partner, because all current partners, in theory, forever they're going to be a part of government. Some of helping to, and this makes sense, identifying those partners from the could be very helpful as we have in this conversation and identifying from what pocket of dollars these resources.
Yeah, you're out when we can do it, and if we can do it. When I look at this list, arts and science, the partnership is like the alliance. You can decide whether you want to count it around, and some in several years. The other three are completely new. And they've always had that money go to their general fund for operations. They've never. I would still say you guys are going to have to do a little go through them. We may not ask the question because I know that we will not that we put them on the table, and I'll try to figure out between the manager. Okay.
So just moving, if we're ready to move on.
Sorry,
Should,
I thought you were just.
we're having, should we have a policy requirement? The next one, their request and application to do.
Then becomes their responsibility to carry the water for that company, that organization. And I before, and I don't think it ever landed anywhere. The question was, what is Studio 345? What is that? What is quarter cents, and what's their plan if they don't do it? Any other questions on art? Anything else, Ms. Mayfield, we ought to be talking about?
So the Regional Business Alliance is obviously the merge requesting $161,526, which is an increase of and I think we pay 30 cents per thousand comes from. And of course, this group is development and marketing, and again, the funding.
So is the funding for it's for everyone?
Yes, my understanding is they apply the same funding formula for all its members.
Okay. Mr. Driggs?
Yeah, Manager, is there anything of the entities in kind of revisiting?
Member
For the
Driggs,
Regional Alliance.
for the Regional Alliance of Ernie Regal came by a part of this first year. Is there an opportunity for some of the locations in that first year, even of the region? So I say that this has been a heavy lift, and Charlotte has been a leader, and I think sticking.
Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Hard to measure it when it's their first year, but considering we've pulled in I'll be very anxious to see, I mean, because now we have a lot more of a demand. You know, we have to think about that with what we're being asked. I wouldn't be surprised if they're asking for more next year, and we have to look at.
Mentioned Mayor Pro Tem. I've never seen more collaboration than I've seen now, and
The Honeywell recruitment, the chamber staff, we're right there along the I think that they have been adding value.
Council members don't get that information. Trade for the region, and it's just sort of this,
I think
a bit
that's
of a black box.
So we are or not it's accomplishing what our economic framework does. So I would say that's fair.
Mayor, thank you.
Okay, Mayor, Mayor.
Also shared that our staff person was going to be doing a lot of work with them. I asked them. We now have a economic development person that work. What they're doing. the same, not with any role in partnership? We already have a staff person. Of government dollars, it would be really helpful. Report just a couple of bullets to know exactly what we're doing.
Mr. Driggs.
I just wanted to say, I don't think last year number and says that this is the right number.
Regional Alliance, these are all, when there are some economic alliances, so to just assume that, caution you, council.
I'm not suggesting we not be a part of it. I'm just saying that that number is arbitrary in the sense that what we were doing before and what we're doing now are whether it's more or less.
And even with the right number, if everybody else has agreed to it, we might just need to know that even. And we're kind of, you know,
They can, if they can do what we want them to do.
assessment just from where we are, it seems better to me. But, okay, the next one. Amount to a smaller amount, I believe, but the 50,000 has been pretty consistent.
50,000. They're not requesting a funding increase, and this is a group that has worked hard to build capacity within individuals and organizations to become a more inclusive and equitable community. And you can read the things that they do. So again, they're not asking or requesting a funding increase.
Any additional questions for the manager to consider?
Safe Alliance. Safe Alliance, you can see their mission statement to provide hope and healing to those impacted by domestic violence and sexual assault. Their FY 2020 request is $445,613, and this is an increase of $63,061 from FY 19. Specifically, what they're trying to accomplish with the increase is to add an additional attorney to their staff to provide additional legal services to their clients.
Ms. Mayfield?
It would be helpful, this request fits in.
I wanted to just say that does everyone know that Center? Is everyone on the council aware of that?
I'm aware. Yeah.
I think we ought to make sure that support, and I don't think that this covers that, but what I have said is place where you just put people into the office building because the office building is there. We've rent. Not to say that proximity doesn't bring around good relationships, but it's so any questions on, and additional questions besides the numbers on Safe Alliance? Okay. B. Charlotte.
Charlotte does. Specifically, they really organize volunteers around tree plantings, and they've been an essential partner to helping the city achieve its 50 by 50 goal. They are asking for $150,000, which is an increase of $50,000 over last year's budget. Specifically, this $50,000 is to help them plant 7,000 trees throughout our community. Their application, it's not on the slide, their application said that they would purchase 3,000 7-gallon trees. It's the size of the tree with this additional money. And so, again, they are linked to our 50 by 50 goal.
Okay, Ms. Mayfield?
So, Mr. Manager, I asked last year regarding Tree Charlotte and attempt to look at the breakdown. What are the salaries of the staff as far as the breakdown of funding? Because our language allows clear cutting, that are under 80% AMI. Adding additional money to plant trees when is a challenge. It will be helpful to know I haven't seen any updates that tells us how many trees have we lost, either through clear call out to justify additional money to plant trees when we have trees that need to be taken care of today.
Follow up on that. I do believe that we had a pilot based on ideas that you brought up, and I'd like to see how we're, I don't know if Mike's in here. Oh, Mike. So what I'm hearing, like,
Prior to falling.
right.
So
Okay.
it will be helpful, help justify
Sure.
how are you utilizing the funds that you're currently receiving.
Will do.
And we- the tree canopy and the tree master plan and is readily available.
I'm glad it was in the Environment Committee.
Yes.
About some trees that were concerning, and they're, with dead limbs. Everybody was hurt. But so trimming up city trees on city right-of-ways that, to that point, we're increasing alive.
So again, I won't put Mike on the spot. I know at some point they came up last year, and we accelerated funds in order to make sure that we are trying to align the funding that's appropriate.
Okay, the next one is my brother's keeper. Neither Mr. Mitchell nor Mr. Mike came in, they came to see us and administration of the foundation for my brother's keeper. And when I saw him yesterday,
Said
pathways.
this one, to me, we really need to connect into the work we're doing around workforce development and not have multiple programs. I see commercial real estate and construction palette, and oh gosh, which to me, that these internship opportunities, we've got a great so this is
services.
It's what?
Duplication.
Yeah, and but we need the growth, but it needs to be coordinated. Or that we've had any conversations around how do we do internships? I know nothing else about except what I read. Okay.
Mayor,
Uh-huh.
along costs for this program.
Yes.
Read their mission. Their mission is to really bring technology skills to young ladies. And this is our first time requesting funding from the city, and they're requesting $60,000.
Okay. On this, I think we do need to know, this is one of the other things, who's on the board? How long have they been in existence? What is this? Microsoft does an in-tech summer program for middle school age girls every year at their campus that we support. And so I don't know the summer program at Tech Academy. Scale, in the appropriate way. Any other questions on in-tech, Ms. May?
Application, somewhere in there, hopefully, we're having a conversation. It making its way before to council, because as was exact work and have been doing this work for a number of years.
Girls who
hopefully when we're identifying our partners out there.
Yes.
That's the school that really look like CMS and some other things before coming to the city.
You to make a cut before you bring it to us on these, instead of bringing us the raw information that which you want you to make some decisions prior to even bringing this list to us.
If it
And I
doesn't
don't
fall in
know-
our priority area.
Well, I mean,
don't
I think
waste
that they
time.
should. I think that he hasn't made a decision yet, or whether or not that these are going to be in the final analysis what he recommends to us. He's just giving.
In 3 weeks today.
Right, and I think that in his budget recommendation, what he wants to bring before.
Clarify, hey, is there opportunity for us to rethink how we're that eventually
That which are the 2 general fund dedicated revenue. Oh, I'm sorry, the Women Business Center. And Junior Achievement, Junior Achievement.
Group that provides financial literacy for youth, and they've requested first-time funding dollars specifically to expand their Junior Achievement BizTown program, and that program is really a program designed for 5th graders to help them develop business skills, budgeting types of skills, and soft skills that they'll be able to use in the future. And then our final partner, new, is the Women's Business Center, and they are requesting $50,000. In their mission really is to help women-owned businesses thrive, and again, they'll be using $50,000 to help increase professional development training sessions for women, minority, and veteran businesses.
Mayor Pro Tem.
They do. This is to a 12-county district, not dissimilar to the regional partnership. We have potential business owners come and need
chip in a like amount, or are we funding a program
doing something that Central Piedmont does, that the lunch and learn sessions, workshops. What separates them from other
type programs. It's almost like we, as a council, need priority, and I don't know, maybe we've just.
With the private sector, I decided on how much we're going to do for our internal operations.
The city of Charlotte empowering women and entrepreneurs. But those that are in Charlotte, so that would be
Mr.
the information
Eggleston?
I'd like to.
I just like to co-sign on Mayor Pro Tem is, and then we can more ably debate how to split the money for the economic or whatever, any community safety type. On one of our priority areas and across a dozen different.
I'm getting back to junior achievement. I didn't think that was new. I thought that to Graham Street, and I thought part of that was the facility.
Table during vote time for junior achievement, and I do not believe that front end, they've asked specifically for this amount. Q&A by this time next week. I will say that I'm very surprised by how few of these we had, but there may be a day I would like the council to start to think about this process, because if we had 70 of these, it would be weeks to get through them. So the more feedback we can get from you to entrust us to use your key lenses in evaluating these, it would be better going forward.
Fair statement. Okay.
The next page.
It is, it is now 5. On my watch, it says it's time for me to stand up and move around a minute or two because I've been sitting so long. So, Mr. Jones, we've got, I see where Charlotte City, the Center City Partners and University are scheduled for April the 8th.
Yes.
Is that at a dinner or?
That's the action briefing, yes.
Action briefing?
Yes.
So Convention Center funding and Film Commission are the two there.
Yeah, so again, these are your dedicated revenue sources. The convention center funds are tourism funds. The request is due to the growth in those funds. It's data driven, and the funding request for Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority Film Commission is the same.
I think we need to see, that is such a large area that we need to really see their budget. We need to have I think that warrants a separate presentation for the CRVA.
Yes.
We have a placeholder for economic development on the 8th also in the action briefing. So we'll bring CRVA on Monday also.
Okay, so maybe the next section will be easier, because we do have policies around our financial funding requests, and I guess what I'm saying is you can give us 5 minutes, and these are criteria-based that have criteria. I think we could be done with the entire block for today.
Right.
All right,
Pam is so
Pam,
ready for this, Mayor.
ready?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all. Just to go very quickly, what I'll do is present your Housing and Neighborhood Services partners. You will see here Crisis Assistance Ministry. They are funded 100% with local funds. They do have an increase in their change. Carolina's Care Partnership, that's funded with your HOPWA, Housing for People with AIDS and HIV. That's a federal grant that they are funded with. In terms of your the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Housing Partnership, they are funded partially through 2 different federal programs and a portion of your local dollars. The first one that you see is their affordable housing contract. They are requesting an increase as well. And then the second one that you see there, they administer your House Charlotte Down Payment Assistance Program. And so there's an increase requested there as well. Crisis Assistance Ministry, they have a request of an additional request of $475,000 there. Their services, I think we all know them well. They focus on preventing homelessness. They provide emergency rent and utility assistance. And then they also have their store where they provide clothing and household goods for folks in need. Carolina's Care Partnership, again, this is passed through with the money. They provide housing referrals for folks living with AIDS and HIV. They also do some education and testing services as well. Housing Partnership, just to go through here, again, I've already talked about what they do. Basically, they build affordable housing. They provide some home buyer training as well. They do a little bit of foreclosure prevention.
So going back to that one, that is the one that I would really like to understand. When we had no other developers in the process, we actually needed a developer that we could work with, and they've been doing this for many, many years. But we've subsidized that, and considering the number of requests that they have that will go through our affordable housing plan, I was just wondering if they're getting developer fees and they're going to be doing the development, what are we subsidizing now? That would be my question. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I understand, Mayor. Do you want us to respond in a follow-up, or would you
In a
like for me to?
follow-up,
Okay.
please. And I'd like to have that conversation, for you to have that conversation with them. I just don't know enough about it to make a decision, but I think that we ought to know from our subsidy, before there were fees, now that there are fees, what is our subsidy needed to accomplish in detail, or is it needed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Out of school time, I'll slow down here. Program's been around since the late 70s. We do have a process that we go through here. We issue an RFP, a biannual RFP. Our partners have said this helps them plan. We also, I would say, in evaluating those proposals when we receive them, I really want to point out here that we have community participation. You can see who the members are, or the organizations represented here. I won't read it to you. And I would also remind you that we use our federal CDBG program. We use our public service cap to fund our out-of-school time partners. Here, this just outlines our process. Basically, we started in October of 2018. We're at the process now. The manager will bring back his recommendations in his budget, and then they will start their programs once they're funded again in September. And this is just detail about who we funded and what's been requested this year. We've already talked about arts and science, so I won't go there again. And so you can kind of just see what the requests are. I think that the takeaway is that we have more requests than we did last year overall.
Okay. If you can also send the criteria that we use, that would be helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
Whenever we get that recommendation, including that. All right, thank you, Pam. Thank you to the team. We did a lot of stuff today. I think it was really valuable time added, so I think we're adjourned.
Good.